Yes, welcome to the Titus O'Reilly and Sergio Paradise Variety Hour. We've been away for a little bit because Serge has actually gone away. He dropped it on me at the last minute. He's away for a couple of weeks he's actually got other things to do apart from this podcast, which I was crushed and hurt and have only just recovered. But the good news is, while he won't be back for a couple of weeks, he will be back. And in the interim, I've managed to line up a bunch of people to talk to. So you'll start getting podcasts thick and fast. I've got one I've got in the can that we're going up in a couple of days is with Stevie J, the famous GWS player. Apparently also played for Geelong, I learnt in the interview. And today I've got someone I once recorded a whole summer of sports shows for Melbourne's Triple R, which I can't remember what the name of the show was, but it was the greatest radio show ever produced. It's a comedy writer by the name of Declan Fay. Now, Declan is behind the Sweetest Plum podcast, which is one of the finest podcasts out there and has been around for a long time and has a huge following and well worth listening if you haven't already heard of it. It's the Sweetest Plum. Also, can I say brains, or would that be putting it a bit too harsh?
You can say brains. Yeah.
Behind international student.
I'd go with heart and soul.
Heart and Soul with Ronnie Chang, that's been on ABC and is now on BBC in England, and also going to be on Comedy Central in the States. Has it been on yet or going to be?
In February, I think it goes on Comedy Central.
That's like the serious stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's real serious stuff.
Well, it is. Yeah. This almost gets out of Melbourne.
If they gave me the choice, if they said, look, you either fill in on Titus and Sergio or you have a show go on Comedy Central, I know which one I'd take. I'd be here with a bullet.
So, Declan, welcome. And you were keen to do this the minute because you live around the corner.
Correct.
So when you realised you didn't have to go anywhere.
That's right. Yeah, well, this is the joy of podcasts, in that this is why I do my own one. I don't have to go to anyone's studio. There's no I don't have to worry about, is my elevator pass working?
When did you start yours? Because you started yours yours was one of the first I noticed getting some actual media coverage.
We were the Velvet Underground of podcasts. We were there right at the start, and basically we didn't have many listeners, but everyone that listened to us then went and started their own podcast.
Right, yeah. So you're very influential. Extremely. When did you start that?
No, we were very early days. Both Nick and I had been fired from a number of TV shows on Channel 7 consecutively, and we just thought we have to do something, and or at least something that looked like employment, so it would work on the Centrelink form.
So when people go, what are you doing?
Working on a podcast. So we did that. When was that? That was about, I want to say, April or May 2010.
Oh, that's a long time ago.
So we were very early days. Then we did that for about a year, and we were picked up by, like yourself, picked up by a commercial network, chewed up, and then spat out very quickly and returned to the podcast studio.
And when you had a bit of a break in the middle of it.
Yeah, I think so. But we came back about, I'm going to say late 2011, early 2012.
Yeah, I remember.
So, we've been doing it for, we're pushing... Yeah, got with 2010, so sort of 7 years.
Yeah.
It's
the longest relationship you've ever been in.
It is actually, my current relationship is slightly longer, but actually the relationship I have with Nick is more fraught. They are a bit like marriages, aren't they? These sort of...
Well, I know I can say this quite openly because Serge won't listen to it, but I have actually missed the bastard.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because you just get into that rhythm of... The weird thing about it is... Once every two. Well, we usually do 2 a week, and our listeners know occasionally we don't do it every. We sometimes do 1 a week. Just depends a bit on our schedules. Yeah. But you get to have this weird kind of therapy session with someone else where you just talk nonsense.
Yeah.
And get all your views that if you did it to a family member or a friend, they would switch off.
You'd be out the door.
Yeah, but because you're on a podcast, they kind of have to look at you in the eye, not be on their phone, and actually listen to you.
Nick and I don't really hang out outside of doing the podcast. That's our one sort of moment together. It's an odd thing. I often think about those sort of relationships. They are a bit like a relationship, except without the sort of, you can never have like angry makeup sex. Like we can, you can, but it'll make for a very different podcast.
Well, this has got awkward.
Yeah, Sergio. No, I'm the fling. Serge is away, and I've just come in. I'm your sort of.
Serge lied to me then. So you and I did Triple R for a while together.
The name of the show, it was The Download.
The Download, that's right. We did it for summer. We filled in for summer.
Yeah, we filled in for Kate McLennan, who is now on the Get Crackin' on ABC.
And the catering show as
yeah.
well. So everyone we work with goes on to great fortune.
That's right.
But we're still here.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was good fun doing that. I don't know if anyone listened, but we enjoyed it. And then... you'd then gone on and you were writing international student at the time.
Yeah. Did I look stressed or was
You were really stressed.
Yeah. I get a bit...
We had more on than you could do.
Yeah, I get a bit... it's just when you write something... I mean, it's difficult for Ronnie and I because he's in the States and he's massively famous and I sit in a house in North Fitzroy sort of... I mean, we both write. We are 50-50. We write everything together. But in order to make it work, I have to share an iCalendar with him because we're in different time zones. So I see what he's got every day so I know when to call him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, if you ever want to be demoralised about your own job prospects or your creative prospects...
Sync it with an A-lister.
Sync it with an A-lister because I swear to God, there was... I mean, every morning I see what he's doing and it's always something awesome. There was one morning... It came up because his little calendar things come up at the same time as mine. And it said, for Ronnie Cheng, it said, catch helicopter to Las Vegas with Trevor Noah. And mine said, fix car parking pass for ABC. On the same day. That was all I had to do was had to go.
Glamorous. You've got a car park at the ABC.
No, but it stopped working. The pass became faulty and I could no longer get into the car park.
Was that their way of sending you a subtle mention?
That's pretty much... That's the way you know you're on the way out there is your pass just stops working at some stage.
But you knew him before he sort of blew up a bit.
Yeah, we worked on a show that nobody really remembers on ABC that I really liked called Problems that Sam Simmons was on.
Yeah.
And he was in the cast and it was my first proper... Sam and I wrote that together and there was other writers, but it was my first sort of what would you call it, narrative sort of thing, and it was his first big
So is it weird to watch him blow up and... You know, is this when
we're both blowing up.
Is this like when Gore Vidal said, every time a friend of mine succeeds, a little part of me dies?
Oh, I love the Gore Vidal quote.
We rarely go an episode without a Gore Vidal quote. But you know what I mean? This is the bit where you go, no, I hate him.
My favourite Gore Vidal quote is when he'd given Norman Mailer a bad review.
Yeah.
And Mailer walked into some party in New York, saw Gore Vidal, ran at him, king hit him, sat over him at the party and was hitting him in the face. Right. And Gore Vidal just looked up with the whole party watching, just said, once again, words fail Norman Mailer. Now, just once in my life, I want to have somebody pounding my head in. And I want to have a line that good.
So we should mention also, you are a Hawthorn supporter.
Yeah.
And
are you announcing that as a people tune out now?
Yeah, I'm saying,
like
I'm
the way they do in Triple J,
up.
they go, bad language if you're offended.
If Hawthorn fans offend you, switch off now.
Yeah.
And you had a great run, and then the last 5 minutes have been a little tough.
I remember I was in New York and I was watching it on a very dodgy internet connection when Isaac Smith took that mark, and we'd gotten out of jail about 5 times
that year. Was this the
year.
first or the second time?
The first time. And I remembered, as I was watching, I was in this tiny bed sit watching it on my laptop, and I just put my head into the bed because I remembered sitting with, I think it was Michael Chamberlain at a Hawks game years ago.
From the Junk Time.
From the Junk Time, because all podcasters hang out together. No one else will hang out with us.
That's right. But we've got a secret handshake and everything.
We've been going to the footy since 2000, since we met each other in 2000 together, and I just remembered him saying, from a game years ago, I don't think Smithy can kick on a set shot. And I heard that, and I put my head down.
That went through your head.
Yeah, and it missed. And it's this weird thing that if that happens in Melbourne and you go out, everybody knows what happens and you're all like...
So that didn't rock New York?
No, I headed out into the East Village and it hadn't made any imprint at all in the East Village.
I'm shocked that they weren't all just sitting around all feeling a bit flat.
Yeah, no, I walked into... was out the front of the old CBGBs and there was no Hawk scarves flying out the window.
So it's been an interesting off-season, but we should mention, you mentioned the ABC before. You do a lot with the ABC, including radio, and you were at the Melbourne Cup yesterday for the Melbourne Cup. Yeah. And was it? It was a cold day.
It's very odd when you get there. I got there very early for the broadcast, about 8:30, and people are queuing up. And on the whole, they look stunning. Like people.
You're going in, everyone looked really great.
Yeah, coming out, not so much. And it reminded
glorious train wreck.
About when was it? About 4 or 5 years ago, I was at the Cup, and I was waiting for a friend outside the gate. And I was standing next to a bloke that had been on that gate for about 50 years. The bloke was about 70 years old.
He's seen things, man.
He's seen everything. And I remember there was just people stumbling out. It was some appalling behaviour. Yeah. And the bloke just looked at me and he said, I've been doing this for 40 years, mate. They go in ham, they come out spam.
He's probably been saying that for 40 years, that exact line.
You reckon he's been running that line for 40 years just hoping someone would pick it up?
That's the only reason he doesn't quit, because he just loves giving that line. Like, I've been through it all.
It's very Dr. Seuss of him, isn't it?
Oh, I love the Melbourne Cup for its drunken debauchery, because I remember one time I went to Melbourne Cup and I don't know why, but by the end of the day, I wasn't that drunk. I was drunk, but I wasn't. Like, I was quite functioning pretty well.
You weren't, I've lost my shoes and handbag, punch on in the car park.
Yeah, I was one of those guys who, like, there's a lot of guys that sort of piggyback their mates and stuff like that, think they're jockeys all of a sudden, reenact races. And I've never been that, because I never want to spill a drink, right? I'm always more looking for the next drink than trying to, do something. But I remember we were sitting there and we were having, the races had finished and everyone's starting to move home, but we knew someone on one of the bars, so we still were having a few beers while we were watching everyone leave. And we watched this woman, she would have been like 50, and she had her shoes off, but she was sitting there and trying to put them back on, and she was so drunk. It must have gone like 20 minutes and it wasn't get any closer.
It's quite zen-like though, isn't it? If you can make
peace. Just watch all these people.
I remember a similar, I'm just going to sit and watch this at the end of the Cup day. It might have been the go-in ham, come out spam here. And I remember thinking, right, this has really gone too far, when there was a bloke who was punching on with a Peter's ice cream umbrella. I swear to God.
With an inanimate object.
It was down.
The umbrella was winning. the umbrella won on points decision.
It was down and he was going, it's like wild haymakers at this umbrella. It wasn't like he was showing off to his mates. He was on his own. He was in a suit. And something.
For him, that was real.
Yeah, he was really looking for someone to take the day out on, and the umbrella copped it.
In fairness to him, if you saw the way that umbrella was looking at him, he couldn't let it slide. But it's almost like, see, to me, the Cup, it's a bit like if you go to Vegas, right? Yeah. It's like a momentary suspension of society's norms for adults. Yeah. It's like today you can basically do anything you want to an extent, and people go, great. That would be what the end of times will be like, but it won't stop.
But that everywhere, just people punching on with umbrellas,
and drinking, and some will be happy and some will be aggro.
The closest I've come to ever seeing that, because it's by the end of the day, it's appalling, right? The behaviour is appalling across the board.
If you're drunk, it's funny.
Yeah, but it's like if you're not and you're just sort of watching it objectively.
So were you sober because you were working?
Not towards the end of the day. It was actually, it was me going punching on with the umbrella. No, I did have a few drinks after the game, after the race. But the only time I've seen anywhere get near that is if you ever go to one of those Day on the Green concerts. Because it's at a winery and it's sunny and people just start roasting up in the sun and they go mental. At a Rod Stewart gig years ago that I went to, I wasn't going for Rod Stewart.
I was about to say, I didn't think it was a Rod Stewart
I was working there a long time ago.
But you just love him singing the classics.
But people were, there was a group of people in the public area, getting those wooden chairs that you sit on and piling them up and putting them into a bonfire, like trying to set it on fire. And it had that real end times thing again, like that sort of, people talk about Woodstock. Once you realise you were locked in there with all these people, how you sort of got a bit cabin fever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
like the darts in Melbourne, remember, when they had the darts tournament at Elliott Stadium. And so everyone's sitting there watching darts and they all drink heavily. And so they had all those white plastic chairs that everyone was sitting on the stadium floor. They'd put wood over the grass and had all the... And they weren't locked down or anything. They were just loose chairs. Yeah. So I think about 2/3 of the way through, with everyone smashed out of their brains, I think everyone realised, hey, we're at a darts tournament. Yeah. We're wasting our lives. So they all started just picking up the chairs and throwing them into enormous piles.
Wow.
And it got high, like a couple of people high, but just piles of these white chairs. So then once one group started, other groups tried to beat them and have bigger piles, and the security, and then punches started getting thrown over it. Yeah. And it was just... turned into one of the greatest moments in Australian sport.
So, I mean, there's only so many times, how long... Of course they went crazy because you're watching overweight men throw tiny, darts at just a point on a wall while another guy keeps going, 150!
Yeah. Why else would you go? So the Melbourne Cup's a bit like that, but just unlike that, there's no pretense of a sport involved because no one's watching the races in the main.
No, that's the thing. I actually really like going to country racetracks because people get into it. But the Melbourne Cup day, it's pretty mental. I
kind of enjoy the madness of it. I think every now and then you need to have a crazy day like that. Yeah. I think people do need to blow steam. And if you're not hitting people, you're pretty right by me.
So you reckon, where's the line? Is it okay to wear a giant horse head and vomit inside it?
Yeah, that's fine.
While dressed as one of the Wiggles?
Well, where I get worried is when you go there and, every guy who's about 20 is wearing snakeskin shoes. Yeah. There's always that guy, that one guy who thought this is the look.
You know what the look was yesterday? I photographed a couple of them actually. A lot of young guys wearing bandanas. Sort of
really
somewhere between Axel. I think I said Axel Whitehead. Axel Rose.
Axel Whitehead. He's a huge.
There was a few of those later on too. Actually,
isn't he hosting? What's he hosting now? The Wall or whatever that show? I haven't seen the show, but I just remember because he was the one that exposed himself at the Aria. Was it the Arias?
Has anyone ever come back from a self-exposure so emphatically as he has?
It's taken him a while because first he started doing TAB ads.
He's on Home and Away.
Oh, was he? See, I don't watch Home and Away, so people can be on Home and Away, and they basically don't exist to me.
Right. Well, the bandanas were halfway between Axl Rose and David Foster Wallace. A lot of dudes.
A lot of that.
They're really thick, it's quite wide, it sort of meets at your eyebrow and then goes sort of almost to your hairline.
And they were wearing that with a suit.
Yeah. This is what they're doing now.
I do worry about the youth.
I like this. Everything else is okay, but I heard people were wearing bandanas in there.
Well, you asked where the line was.
That's the line.
It wouldn't matter how drunk I was. Yeah. Friends don't let friends wear bandanas. In fact, I understand that's why that Peter's umbrella got upset at the bloke. He said, "What are you looking at?" He said, "Your stupid bandana."
I like, because it's basically once Johnny Depp started doing it, that was like that.
Well, Bruce Springsteen did it, so that gets some cred for me.
I reckon
guess.
Johnny Depp. I reckon it started.
You blame Johnny Depp, but you blame Johnny Depp for a lot of things.
I reckon that bandana is going by his movie choices the last few years. That bandana was cutting off a lot of blood to the brain.
Do you reckon Johnny Depp's if you had to bet on who's the next most likely to come a cropper in the Hollywood sex scandals after Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey?
It's a lot.
Is Johnny Depp like someone you push all your coins in on?
Oh, yeah. It is all in on Depp. Absolutely. That is. There's a few. Go in on Depp and just let it ride.
But I think Spacey's...
We're not going to play out the next...
sexual predator in Hollywood.
It's
such a rich field, though, because if you could know this, you just know what's coming down the pipe is going to be huge.
Oh, it is.
There's going to be less people that make it. The blokes in Hollywood, less people will get through this unscathed.
No, I know.
Imagine this happened in the footy world.
Oh, it'd be wild.
We wouldn't have a competition.
No, that's right.
The Hall of Fame would be empty.
It'd be like Gary Ablett playing on his own. Wasn't that the whole thing, that he was the only one at Gold Coast that wasn't
Well, no, apparently there was cocaine and
Yeah.
stuff with Carmichael Hunt. Apparently at the Gold Coast, it got split into one group that were very religious.
Yeah.
And Gary was in that. And then another group that just snorted a lot of coke.
Yeah, right.
And so two very, not always separate groups.
No, both fanatical.
In life. They just love something so much.
Both really annoying to talk to get stuck with at a party.
You put a highly religious or cokeheads in the same.
That's right.
It's the same outcome. People that are really into something are annoying.
Yeah, you got to worry about that.
So, of course, the thing I found interesting, Lloyd Williams' horse won again.
Okay, did you... I looked
Rekindling.
I saw the Herald Sun this morning, and it was something like... The headline is something like, Lloyd's magic touch wins again. It's like, it's not a magic touch if you own all the horses in the race. He owns 6 horses. That's a quarter of the field, right?
Right, yeah.
And somebody was scratched. So he owns more than a quarter of the field.
Yeah.
That is not a magic touch. There's nothing.
It's gerrymandering.
There's nothing magic about that at all. The only magic thing is that he felt so sorry for Frankie Dettori that he let Frankie Dettori on his 16th ride Almandan.
Yeah.
And they kept saying, he did Frankie Dettori a favour. It's Frankie's. I reckon he just went, which is the least likeliest to win. There's only been 2 back-to-backs in the last...
Let's not waste it on...
Yeah. Frankie, I got a really good offer for you.
Lloyd Williams is just a constant reminder that horse racing is one where even the battlers can get up. Because it was him and Michael Gudinski were some of the owners. It's sort of... It's always the who's who. But they always talk about Lloyd like he's some, not a guy who made all his money off gambling and casinos.
That's right.
But some, patron saint.
If you added... I was looking at him on the coverage yesterday, and he had that grey suit with quite a large
He looks
top
like the
hat.
Penguin from the Batman movies.
See, I was trying to work out what he looked
From
like.
the 60s Batman TV show, rather.
If you... I was thinking if you added a white moustache on there, he'd be the Monopoly guy.
Yeah, that does work too.
But the Penguin's not bad.
He does look like that, but he's the winning trainer, Joseph O'Brien. He's 24 years old.
That's ridiculous.
I'm not that surprised because it's still a horse. He didn't run the race.
Yeah, but think about, to be a trainer, they get up at about 3 a.m.
Yeah.
What 24-year-old can do that?
Do you think he just rolls in from the nightclub?
Yeah, he's just straight there, actually. He's been out all night, just turns up straight to the track.
He's all energised.
Yeah, that's why he's so wide awake.
Peaking.
Yeah, come on. So, okay, let me just work this out. We're outing a bunch of people from Hollywood, and now we've said that the Melbourne Cup winning trainer is peaking of ecstasy.
Well, I would never accuse anyone in racing of being involved in drugs.
Yeah, okay.
And we didn't out anyone. We just said who's most likely. And I think Johnny Depp's a fair bet.
Yeah, okay.
I'm happy to be proven wrong, Johnny, if your lawyers are listening.
Yeah.
He's not going to come to Australia again.
No, can't bring the dogs.
No, we're fine. So 24, I hadn't achieved anything at 24. I mean, in fact, I haven't achieved anything now.
Yeah.
But, it's a weird thing to get into. But they were all talking, I don't know, are some trainers actually really good, or is it you get a good reputation so then people give you the best horses?
I think it's...
Or is it a little of column A, column B?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that I don't know. I mean, the pool is already small because, as we said, anyone prepared to get up at 3 a.m. And the first thing you do...
That's how you write people off.
Yeah, you either become a horse trainer or a breakfast radio host.
And apart from that, no one is up that early.
Yeah, that's it. That's all there. Maybe that's the only people that listen to breakfast radio is horse trainers driving into the track. No, I think it would... I remember hearing... Ian Thorpe interviewed saying it actually does, you do worry what it does to a young person's brain to be jumping
horse
in a
racing.
To be jumping in a swimming pool at 5 a.m. and just following a black line for your whole, childhood. And you do likewise. What would that what would it do to your brain to be constantly getting up at Bart Cummings looked horrendous. Like, he hung on for a long time, but
he'd been around.
The bags under
those eyes. You reckon
eyes.
sleep deprivation takes years off your life?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think Grant Hackett would agree. The minute he moved away from Black Line, he got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no, the minute he did, he started wearing singlets around his waist and demolishing grand pianos with his bare hands.
Tweaking the nipples of the passenger in front of him.
Jesus.
He's got a good list, a rap sheet. Police said the Melbourne Cup the crowd had been mostly well behaved. They said they only evicted 3 racegoers for the whole day for general offending and 4 for drunkenness. What do you reckon general offending is? Like punching on with an umbrella?
I reckon the cops probably go, similar to a prison, it's better we've got them all in here than out there. It's sort of a bit like a panopticon. We're safer in the middle of this than letting them out. Like, you got to do something really rough to be ejected from the races.
Yeah, you can't just be being silly.
No, it's got to be something quite
I saw
extraordinary.
one where there was a photo on one of the papers where there was a bunch of guys and they'd got a bar stool and then about 8 and this is the only thing that seemed really clever and sensible when you're drunk.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm not even... if I was really drunk, I would be probably all in on this.
Yeah.
And they'd got like about 8 milk crates and stacked it on top of the bar stool. And then one of the guys managed to climb up and sit on top.
Wow.
So he's fair way up. Like, if he fell, he'd do himself a mischief.
Geez, wouldn't you be annoyed if you got there early, got a spot on the grass and that bloke's in front of you?
Anyway, it's the police trying to talk him down.
Yeah.
And you can just see, like, you become a policeman to make a difference in society and, like, maybe put violent crimes away or solve crimes.
Who's the guy they call in? Who's the negotiator who has to get you down? Does he do is it your old, like, crazy cop like Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon? He climbs up there and handcuffs himself to you. How about you? You jump.
Do you think there's a CSI Melbourne Cup? It's a great cop show right there and then.
That's superb. They only work, like, it takes so much effort. They only do the Melbourne Cup. For the rest of the 364 days of the year, they're recovering. Yeah. Or, like, checking swabbed samples from toilet seats.
Well, there was only 2 arrests for drunkenness. So you had about 8 people or 7 people thrown out for general offending and being drunk, and then you had 2 arrests for drunkenness. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, but the bar
losing their edge.
The bar is pretty low. Like, don't you? Yeah.
You got to, like, that. Remember that woman that pushed the cop into the flower bed at the Melbourne Cup?
Yeah.
He thought she was coming up to talk to him, and it was on TV.
But she got a slap on the wrist. That's the thing. Like, if that again, it's what you're saying. Like, what's going on in there is not okay. If you did that in King Street or anywhere,
they'd have belted you.
Oh, they would. They'd have you down on the ground, jaw open over the nearest curb, and just stomping the back of the head.
Hello to our police friends listening.
That's
too.
Right. Yeah.
Now, moving on from the races, although I would say one thing I've enjoyed about watching the races on 7 is the way they're seamlessly working in advertising opportunities.
Yeah.
So they send the commentators out to go shopping. Oh. And they film it like they really are, like they wander in and like the shop's like, oh, you're here, and they do it. It's just,
they're not even trying.
It makes the footy coverage look like Citizen Kane.
I've got to say, just quickly on the protesters, this
was they parked a car across
the train tracks.
And this was protesting Manus Island.
That's right, and people were talking about it at the track yesterday.
Oh, were they?
Trains.
They went up on a crane as well.
That's what I can't work out, if there was a difference between the crane and the
car.
And the car. I think
it was both protesting the same thing. I think it was organised together.
You know what alarmed me is I was just flipping through the paper this morning and they had a picture of the car, and it's a Ford Laser, and it's exactly the car that I have had for the last 10 years. And we've since sold it because we needed something a bit more appropriate for 2 kids. But I was like, oh my God, I've been driving the same car as a sort of Melbourne anarchist, like, protester.
Do you think that could be like the ad campaign?
For Ford lasers.
Yeah, the choice of anarchists worldwide.
There was a little part of me, because mine was really broken down, right? Like it was really struggling, and we just sold it to a Wreckers or something for about $500. Yeah, that's right. There was a part of me going, I really hope that's my car. They'd taken the number plates off, and I was going, I really hope the anarchists got down the Wreckers and went, that's the car we want to throw.
I think putting the car on the train tracks.
Yeah. It's a big move.
It's one that I get what they're protesting, but like you derail a train and have a few hundred deaths.
Yeah.
It's not going to bring everyone round to your cause.
Well, and the girl also handcuffed herself to the steering wheel. That is a huge...
I know.
That's a massive manoeuvre.
Yeah, they must have warned the Metro they're doing it or something.
Oh, I don't really... So the train doesn't come flying through. And
they're pretty regular on that line during the races. If there's one thing we're good at, it's getting people... we can't get people in and out of the refugees in and out of Papua New Guinea, but boy, can we get them in and out of Flemington. Yeah. We even give them water and everything in there. One thing that caught my eye this week was Jamie Elliott. I should say Collingwood star Jamie Elliott. He's going to face the music, I think, on Thursday this week. We're recording this on a Wednesday. On Sunday morning, he was arrested he'd been out for Derby Day with friends at Flemington, and in North Melbourne in Victoria Street in the early hours of Sunday, he was spied by police urinating into a bin. And he was arrested for being drunk in a public place, $634 fine. And he then rang up the club to say, this is what I've done.
Yeah. Did he ring while he was straight after?
It lends it one eye. My view was it's good to see you can hit a target.
Yeah. Well, you never know though. Maybe the truth of that, it's just sprayed everywhere except in the bin.
But you know what? That's a Collingwood supporter's home.
Well,
show a bit of respect there, Jamie.
Yeah, a couple of the cheer squad members
got out. And what are you doing? Oh, it's Jamie. Well, we're so on it. We're blessed.
Yeah, that's the traditional greeting. Collingwood cheer squad member is to urinate on him.
Aren't you glad Buckley's straightened up the culture at that club?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I remember one of the very first footy games I went to. First couple were in Perth because I grew up there, but then when we moved here, I saw a Hawthorn-Collingwood game at Vic Park. Yeah. And it was feral. Yeah. And I remember my image of that game, I remember a tiny bit of the actual game, but I remember saying to my dad, I'm going to go to the toilet. And a bloke standing next to us on the hill just went behind those goals, just went, don't drown. And I walked in there.
How old were you?
About 11, maybe 12, and the toilets, those old toilets that were out the back, down the bottom of a hill, were at least ankle deep with piss. And there was Collingwood supporters just literally unzipping themselves and pissing in the door. So as a kid, you're thinking, well, that's everyone's doing that. I'll just do that. So it's this is not a new thing for Collingwood people. This is deeply embedded in the tradition.
Well, when I was writing my book and I'm researching all this stuff, I was genuinely this wasn't just a joke. As I read more and more about every sport and was going through, and I was always looking for the funny stories or the scandals. Yeah, yeah. And I realised Australian sport is basically moments of glory punctuated by tons of stories of public urination. The amount of stories is just immense on police cars.
At least Jamie Elliott's gone for a bin. If it was a rugby player, it'd be straight into his own face.
But remember where Craig Bird, I think, he also got caught urinating on a police car on his wedding night.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where was the wife?
Oh, I don't know, helping him.
It was on the other side of the car.
She was waiting in line. She said, hurry up. Who knows? But this is like, it is amazing how often it happens.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see what Collingwood do about this.
Maybe
because
that's all this media training, and they get from the word go. You literally get drafted. One of the first things they give you is media training.
Yeah.
Just throw that out the door. Get toilet training in there really early. Show people how to use a urinal.
Yeah.
Maybe give the players those sort of like incontinence nappies that old guys wear. They'll be fine.
But do you know what? They always talk about this, like the AFL players, they all get, and NRL too, they all get like, they get trained at, so they all join like when they're about 18, right? And they get put in these programs. And they always say what they're teaching them to do. And it's always like, it's depressing that this is like the state these blokes are turning up in when they're 18, like their knowledge of the world. So they have all this stuff about racism, which is like basic 101 of racism, like sexism and how to treat women and what not to do, where it's stripped down to like the most basic, like women are just like, they're people. Yeah. It's like, it's that level of, and don't take naked photos and forward them to all your mates. They cover all that.
Yeah.
And they cover all how to behave in public and all this sort of stuff. They cover all this basic thing. And then it's always like the footy players always find something to do that the AFL couldn't possibly foresee. So like the setting the dwarf on fire.
Yeah.
Like where was the AFL? Do you think the AFL had to then write a module?
That was just add a chapter.
Add a chapter to the book.
Do you remember that year? Like the excuse that one of the players used. I want to say it was Lee Montagna, but they said what? Somebody, journo rang them and said, "How do you think this happened?" He goes, "Look, I'm not making excuses, but." To that stage, the performer, the dwarf, hadn't really fulfilled our expectations.
That's right. He said it in an email.
If that is the case, then somebody needs to go down to fucking Moorabbin with a flamethrower and torch the joint to the ground.
See, when they said, we set on fire because he hadn't been very funny, that... Whenever I'm doing stand-up before I go on stage, that's always my motivation.
Well, if that is the case, then any player that has ever appeared on the football show should be immediately immolated.
They should just have... On that cheery thought, let's go to a feel-good story.
Yeah.
Neil Craig... of Adelaide Crows coaching fame, and was at Essendon and was at Melbourne. He's been appointed... as head of high performance for the English rugby team.
Is this just
rugby union? This is
another in a series of sports Neil Craig hasn't played but ends up in charge of.
When I read this, I was like, this is terrific because I hate the English rugby team. I don't know why. I don't know if it goes even pre-2003 World Cup. I've just, for some reason, I'm just always irrationally hated the English rugby. I don't hate the English rugby, the English football team.
Yeah. I don't care. Yeah,
it
would be like hating a homeless person or something. Like you couldn't.
A homeless person that's not very good at football.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I don't hate them. But for some reason, even though the rugby union side, English rugby union side's been up and down, but I just don't. The whole Sweet Chariot singing, and I've always had an irrational hatred of them. So seeing Neil Craig appointed as their high performance coach,
you didn't think that there was any way that hatred could get any stronger.
Well, it's not saying I'm actually thrilled with this appointment.
Really?
Well, Neil's never really taken anything to great heights.
That's true.
And this isn't even a sport he's got to... what's he going to come up with?
Wasn't Dean Robinson the weapon? Wasn't he the high performance manager at Geelong? It's an odd job, high performance management.
Well, there's different things though of high performance. I think he was... the problem with Dean Robinson is the weapon as a nickname was one he gave himself.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It's an old rule. You can't give yourself a nickname. Can't be anything. But if you are even going to go down that path, you can't call yourself the weapon.
The only thing you can do is, if you're going to give yourself a nickname and get away with it, it's got to be a name that is self-deprecating.
Yeah.
Even then, it's weird.
No, it's even then.
But that's the only way you could possibly
Yeah.
And, it'd have to be pretty good.
Weapon.
But the weapon. Imagine saying, call me the weapon.
Oh, yeah. I'm Dean, but you guys can call me the weapon. I mean, Jesus. That entire... I mean, they should have known then.
Well, then also he was a former... Do you know he was a former rodeo clown?
No.
I'm 100% serious.
What a stunning piece of information.
That was on his CV.
Where was that footage? Why wasn't that tabled in the High Court?
That was where I instantly just loved that whole story. That story just...
everybody had their favourite moment of that story.
Yeah.
Mine absolutely is James Hird having to say in court that he'd taken the tanning drug, and the side effect had been that he got a constant erection.
Yeah,
I think he used the technical term, which is priapism, which is the medical term for constant erection. But everybody has a favourite moment of that saga.
I know, it's hard to go past that one. I'm going to admit.
A lot of people's favourite moment is Peter Dank getting shot.
Although the long discussion I had with the police where I finally managed to find an alibi.
Yeah, I know.
Took me ages.
No, I mean,
there's a lot of suspects.
Even the just how he kept going. Don't worry, when I show this evidence.
Yeah, when the timing's right. When the timing right's coming. I don't know why Neil Craig apparently is going to be trying to develop leadership, and it's the way that this is from a BBC article. They said the 61-year-old recently left his role at the Australian Football League club Carlton, where he worked as a director of coaching, development, and performance. Now,
if you're going to pluck anyone from any team, you wouldn't be going, "Who's at Carlton?"
Yeah.
We need to get
if Alistair Clarkson got this, you might go, "Oh yeah, that could maybe work."
That's crazy.
It just shows you it's amazing. So I don't know what, but I'm hoping that leads to a similar level for the English rugby team as Carlton currently do.
Yeah.
Showing that there's a big difference between rugby union, though, and league, and this is my favourite league story of recent times. If you're in Melbourne, you could easily not know this is happening, but the Rugby League World Cup is currently on, and some of the games are here in Australia and some are in New Zealand, and Scotland are out here playing, and their team captain and two of his teammates were kicked off their Rugby League World Cup squad after being too drunk to catch a flight from Christchurch to Brisbane to play their next game. So they were too drunk to get on. They remained in Christchurch while the rest of the squad flew to Cairns for the next match against Samoa. The chairman of the Scottish Rugby League said that his organisation fully supported the airline's decision to review to let the trio on the early morning flight. He said they clearly had been drinking in an inappropriate fashion. The consequences of that became very obvious at the airport, which I just got this scene in my head. He said and you're in trouble when it's like your team going to bat for the airline.
Yeah, totally.
Like, not even a little bit, but fully just throwing you under the plane as it is. The airline were quite within their rights to say what they said.
Yeah.
Doesn't say what they said, but you're kind of reading in. They were supported by all of us. So the Scottish team are sort of standing in solidarity with the flight attendants.
If your teammates of all Scottish rugby players are saying you're too drunk,
that's right. It's a bunch of Scottish rugby league players going, he was
But what you didn't
way out of order.
What you didn't realise was that the VRC was just going, just bring them into Flemington. They'll just drop them off here on the door. They'll be totally fine.
Yeah, they wouldn't even stand out.
We'll stick them straight in the bird cage. They will be more than happily take them.
I just love that it kind of leads this story. It doesn't describe anywhere what they actually did. It leaves it all to your mind to fill in. But you just wonder what they were saying and doing to basically... Because you can be a bit under the weather. Like, you can be massively hungover and you've got to catch a flight and all you want to do is just sit down and not talk to anyone and just hold on and hope. So they obviously were still very drunk, not just had a big night out and were feeling a bit...
Imagine, because there's a long flight, Christchurch to...
Cairns?
To Cairns.
Is it?
I mean, I've never done it, but it's long enough to go from New Zealand to Melbourne. And so I imagine, what are you adding, 3 hours onto that?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you're some poor New Zealander. It's your, trip to the mainland. and then you cop one of these 3 Scottish players sitting next to you for the 5 hours.
Who's still partying like the night hasn't ended.
It would be a rough flight.
I saw a story today on the social medias that was about a flight had to get diverted and land early because I think it was a quite long flight, like London or somewhere. Yeah. And because midway through the flight, a wife and husband, the wife worked out that her husband was having an affair.
Oh, during the flight?
Yeah, and just went ballistic. So they had to divert the plane.
Was he having an affair with the person sitting on the other side?
That's what I didn't know. It didn't really go in.
So you often wonder that, like... I have thought, like, you know, because they apparently only have air marshals on certain flights and it's much more often on international flights. And I have wondered, like, if someone goes spare on a flight from Melbourne to
say
Perth,
Graham Hackett.
Yeah, that's right. If somebody starts tearing the aircraft apart with their bare hands, what do? Do you just have to land it at the next town?
Yeah, they must.
Yeah, I know.
They must just divert them. The thing about this NRL, the NRL Integrity Unit is looking after the World Cup on behalf of the World Cup organisers. They were called into this about
Who's
this
in
Scottish.
The Integrity Unit for the NRL? Is it Andrew Johns, Todd Haynes? What's his name? I've forgotten the name of the guy that put the finger up the...
Hopewate.
John Hopewate. He's on the Integrity Unit as well.
They were already investigating a fight between 2 Italian teammates in a Cairns nightclub. This is what I want from a Rugby League World Cup, right? Now, the best bit is the Scottish Rugby League had to come out because they left these 3 guys drunk in Christchurch because they were too drunk to fly. They were accused of abandoning them completely because they were just packed up and went. But it was kind of ominous what they said. He said the trio were not, this is once again the chairman, said the trio were not being abandoned. He said plans were put in place for them to stay in Christchurch overnight before flying out on Monday to wherever they have to go.
Oh, that is great.
Just kind of ominous, like, where are you going?
Yeah, no, they're not ever rejoining that team. It'll be like the MH, the flight that disappeared. We'll never hear of these Scottish players again.
No, they're never leaving New Zealand. New Zealand are keen on taking in refugees.
Yeah, so they'll be fine.
He's got 3.
Yeah.
Now, this is a cracking idea that I can't believe is getting criticised, and you can see maybe this is something the AFL could look to do in doing their scheduling next year. The ATP in tennis and Red Bull. So right there, this is getting off to a flight. Yeah. Red Bull is a sponsor. They've apologised for the offensive nature of the next-gen ATP final draw in Milan. So this was for a draw for a tournament of who's going to play who. Now, what they did to do it is they were trying to highlight Milan's status as a fashion capital.
Yeah.
But it says here it left onlookers stunned. So what they did is players were all led down a catwalk one by one. They had to first choose a model, a female model, to walk them down. So they sort of had to pick, like, picking a team at school.
Oh, no, you don't want to be the last model picked.
Yeah, the last model picked.
No.
So first they do that. That was seen as, like, particularly sexist, making them pick, these male players pick a model.
Yeah.
Not what they wanted. They then walk down the runway with them, and then the model would reveal what they had got, whether they were in the A or the B side of the draw. Yeah. And the first model that walked down revealed what side of the draw is by lifting up their skirt to reveal an A written on their thigh. Yeah, on their thigh.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And then...
on their thigh?
Yeah. This was for Dennis Shapovalov.
The only way it gets worse is if they have to pull their skirt up and it's shaved into their pubic hair.
Have you read this story already? No. Then the American Jared Donaldson, he was shown his grouping by his model dancing in front of him with a bee on her back.
Oh my God.
And that's how they did it. So then this naturally, you'd be surprised, it said it left onlookers stunned. You had all these male and female tennis players, famous tennis players, all tweeting how outraged they were by it.
Oh, my God.
And so they put a thing, said, ATP and Red Bull apologised for the offence caused by the draw ceremony. The intention was to integrate Milan's rich heritage as one of the fashion capitals of the world. However, our execution of the proceedings was in poor taste and unacceptable. We deeply regret this and will ensure there is no repeat of anything like it in the future.
I'm just always amazed when something that drastically misguided gets through. Like,
oh yeah, because there was
a lot of
meetings
steps.
and stuff.
Like, it wasn't just like randomly.
A rogue guy went, let's do this.
Someone has to hire the models. Like, the players have to be told about it. Like, there's a lot in any organisation. A few people have to sign off on it.
Yeah. It's not like they just wandered in and went, let's do this.
It is just, and then because you often, you see tennis is, it perceived as one of the more conservative sports. I mean, you could, for only recently could you not wear white at Wimbledon?
Yeah.
Like, and so to have this happen on the ATP's watch is an extraordinary manoeuvre.
Well, it reminded me a bit of, talking of those, I love those moments there were meetings for things.
Yeah.
And, then it still happens.
Yeah.
Remember at the Brownlow a few years ago when they had the giant almost like turntable rotisserie that they put women on to like spin them around so we could all ogle them.
It was something. It was like it had like a real Orwellian name,
people were made to go on it at gunpoint.
Yeah,
you want to get in.
It was called the
the best bit they did to sort of, I reckon what was happening while that was happening is there was a lot of kickback on social media in real time about what a disgrace it was.
Yeah.
So they put Andrew Demetriou and his wife on at the same time.
That is amazing.
So you're getting this 360 view of Andrew Demetriou.
That is...
Which no one wants to see.
Extraordinary. No, there's the horror version is if they put Mick Martin on it and you get a 360-degree shot of
But that would have gone through about 10 meetings.
It's amazing. When people come up with these things and it somehow gets through to the other end, you sort of almost admire that it lasted that long.
Yeah, there's just people sort of. Do you reckon? I reckon it's like when you're at work, right?
Yeah.
And people suggest something, and you're going, "Well, that's a terrible idea," but you're like not really that related to it. It's not. You're not going to be held accountable, and also you kind of think, someone's going to put an end to this. Yeah. Like, I don't want to,
No, I don't want to be the guy.
Because I don't care enough. It's not my area.
Yeah.
So I reckon there's a lot of that. Everyone going, oh, this is so crazy. Someone up above's going to shoot this down. And then no one does.
And then nobody does. And it sneaks its way all through to the end. It's like, you're expecting, like, it's when that lands on the head of the ATP's desk, like, you're just expecting a red pen to go right through that. Yeah. And he, maybe comes in late. He's like, yeah, it's a catwalk. I get it. Like, just signs off on it.
Sounds great.
A and B, yeah, that's okay. I mean, that is just, at what stage do people just go, look, this was just a really bad choice?
But at what point also do you kind of go, like, when people make these excuses and go, oh, we poorly executed, or we didn't know, we didn't mean to call offence, or we didn't understand this would cause offence, whatever the thing is, it's like when you see people who do blackface. Yeah. And it'll be on social media and then it will blow up and people will go, I had no idea this was offensive. Yeah. And you're like, it's like on the news every week. Yeah. Like, like you just didn't get racism. You just grew up in this world where you just didn't engage with life. It's the classic,
if anyone was offended, I apologise.
My favourite is if anyone is offended. Yeah. Because it kind of is actually saying, if anyone's offended, asterisk, if you were offended, there's something wrong with you. Buddy. Yeah, you are weak. Yeah. If you've got no sense, if anyone with no sense of humour was offended.
Yeah. Eddie Maguire loves it if anyone was offended.
They all do, though. It's the standard go-to line to the point where you better to not use that.
He, when the Adam Goods thing happened and the way it's still one of the greatest pieces of sporting double-speak hyperbole ever. Yeah. When, he was trying to sort of get himself out of it on air, and he goes, oh, they would do that, wouldn't they? And then he goes, and you're like, who? And he goes, oh, not the ape thing, the whole thing. The pumping him up and mucking around and that sort of stuff. And you go, what sort of stuff, Eddie? What are you talking
about? Well, you know when it was in trouble when Luke Darcy just went, no, Ed.
Yeah.
And you're like, if Luke Darcy's...
But when Eddie then...
Luke Darcy's letting you go through the keeper, not...
When Eddie called a press conference and did his own press conference, they go, what were you thinking, Eddie? And he goes, like the old days. And you go, when was that ever? And then they go, what do you mean the old days? And he goes... Vaudeville. And at that stage, he's just saying, I've been to vaudeville shows. I've never seen that happening at vaudeville shows. Also, when is Eddie going to a vaudeville? Is he going down to his local two-rack speakeasy?
See, I always thought the great untold bit of that Adam Goods King Kong morning was... Where Triple M got in real trouble, really, before even Eddie spoke, was agreeing to promote a musical.
It's very true.
Just shouldn't it should have never been accepted as an advertiser for their target market.
Well, do you know,
who is advertising a musical on Triple M?
That's you're spot on.
That's where Eddie should have been furious at the ad department and go, to be honest, guys, why am I advertising a musical?
Who's the bloke who's picking the secret sound is going to be so keen when he ends up with 2 box seats in the dress circle for King Kong the musical. You're absolutely spot on.
It's just a weird thing.
Yeah.
I don't think Triple M have ever gone back and dipped their toe in musicals.
I have an inside word on that, in that I did used to work at that network.
Yeah.
Somebody told me, this is serious, that when you say who is doing that, that was going to be that Eddie was going to promote that musical. And they were going to have 2 seats that Eddie would give away for King Kong every week.
Yeah.
And it was going to be called something like Eddie's King Kong Hot Seats.
Right.
It's something along those lines. So he picks you.
Do you reckon when the guy in marketing came up with that, they just all high-fived each other?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Nailed it.
Yeah. But then the morning that Eddie then starts doing his King Kong material, those advertising guys, the sob that you would have heard coming out of his little... There wouldn't have been enough cocaine to go around that morning.
Oh, it's crazy stuff. Oh, well, Declan, been always good to have you on. Great to get you in. We'll have to get you on again soon. The Sweetest Plum, people can pick that up at all good podcast stores.
On iTunes. I mean, look, I'd have to say it's probably the best, comedy podcast in Australia. There's no one doing what we're doing, like 2 guys. 2 white guys. 2 white 30-somethings talking into a MacBook. Like, there's just no one's doing that. And so if that's something you're into and you can't find it anywhere else, just look up Key the Sweetest Plum into iTunes and that's where you'll find us. There's not
many people, is it?
I know there's just, 2 guys just, turning on microphones with no preparation and just talking whatever comes into their mind. Where else are you going to find that?
Oh, no, nowhere else. Well, thanks, Declan. We should, I'm going to be back on Mondays. I'm calling this on Wednesday, with Stevie J. I sat down with Stevie J to talk about his new book, which is actually, it was a good chat. Did you ask him, because wasn't part of his recovery that he went and moved into the Brownless household? Oh, he does cover that off in the book. Yeah. We didn't get it, but we talked about, first we'd spent a bit of time, me talking about how he'd basically bullied me emotionally and mentally when Geelong beat Melbourne by 187 points and he kicked something like 6 goals and 10 set up another 10. As a Melbourne supporter, isn't there like a lot of those players? Well, you'd be surprised that he didn't seem particularly... Yeah. He didn't exactly, look like he felt really bad. I don't blame him. Speaking of Melbourne supporters, I met a Melbourne supporter at the races yesterday. Yeah. One of the guys working on the ABC broadcast. I think I can say Peter Matesi, a local writer, was on ABC radio, and he was saying his first ever Melbourne game as a kid was the Melbourne Hawthorn preliminary final where Buckenara kicked that goal and he was with his dad behind the goals and like all day it looks like they're winning, they're going to go into a grand final. And he said they were literally under where that ball sailed over their head. He described it so unbelievably candidly. At least things got better since then. Yeah. His dad probably said, look, it's only going to go up from here. Yeah. Next year. Yeah. So that's Stevie J on Monday, and Serge should be back. So he's got a couple of weeks, so he's going to be back. So we'll be filling it with a few different guests. Big thank you, Declan, coming in. If you're a supporter, big thank you for being a supporter. You can become a supporter of the Titus and Sergio Variety Hour at tutsoriley.com. Also, my book is for sale. Perfect Christmas present in that you can just buy it for someone and it requires little thought, which is, I think, the best Christmas present. Was your book launch, the tour you did, each place were you going to a catwalk and walking down the catwalk with a model that you'd chosen? That's how I announced. That's probably, if the book doesn't sell, I'm going to blame the publicist for not coming up with that idea. And then they lift the skirt and it's taped to the thigh. That's right. I think that's a nice, subtle way of introducing a book. Anyway, we'll see you on Monday. Thanks for listening.